our preseason vibes, what we're thinking about this team. And what I want to go to first, just so we have it in the back of our head, we have the Jets over under set at 5.5, the Giants set at 7, according to Sharp Football Analysis. Pat, this is based off of strength of schedule, based off Vegas win totals. It's not based off of last year's nothing or other. It's based off of what's expected for this year. The Giants have, at this point in time, the easiest schedule, according to Sharp Football Analysis, a guy and site who I trust a lot with how he breaks stuff down. So with that being said, when you had to point your optimism anywhere, obviously Becton's out for the year, Wilson's banged up for now. If you have to point your optimism in a direction towards the Jets or the Giants, which way are you taking that optimism?
If I'm picking between one of the two, I don't think either of them are going to.
Yeah, if you want to say pessimism for both, I'll take that too.
Well, not necessarily pessimism, because you got to take into effect that these teams are they're not ready to be playoff contenders. Giants are in year one. Once again, right? You've hit the reset button again, hopefully for the last time, but you have hit the reset button again on the Giants. So if there is, if there's any more if there's optimism for the Giants, it's okay. Look for the future. Hopefully Brian Daboll is a good head coach and Joe Shea knows what he's doing with the draft. You hope the draft picks pan out, which I loved. I think everybody loved for both teams. Thibodeau and Neal for the Giants, and the 3 that the Jets got, led by Sauce Gardner. But more optimism for the Jets. That and a week ago, I'd be saying it's not even close. Now with the Zach Wilson injury, we had the surgery. It went as well as they hoped. It is 2 to 4 weeks. I would say he's probably going to miss week 1, and there's a chance he misses week 2. But there's still more optimism for the Jets. I love the weapons they have on the team this year. Eli Moore coming off of a tremendous year. Corey Davis coming off a year where he struggled and was shut down for basically the last month. If he's anything close to what they signed him for, he'll have a bounce back year. And then, another first-round draft pick in Garrett Wilson. Plus, I love that they brought in C.J. Uzomah after the year he had with Cincinnati. And, he's a tough as shit guy because he basically tried to play through an injury in the Super Bowl. I think Zach's ceiling could be high. I think his floor is also pretty low, though. And obviously he had a, rough rookie season last year. The second half was much, much better than the first. But they've got the first half of the schedule for the Jets is grueling, right? They're playing probably out of the first 9 games, 7 of those teams are probably going to make the playoffs. So they got a tough start to the year. And now that Wilson's out for the first 1, if not 2 games, they're probably going into the bye week at 2-7. But if there's optimism, it's just as well as they rebounded at the end of the year last year, and you had a lot of good feelings going into the offseason. I think they have a chance to, in the final 8 games, to go 5-3, maybe even 6-2 if Zach stays healthy, because the second half schedule was weak. And I think at that point, you've had faced some adversity. I trust that Robert Saleh has the locker room together and that he can keep the locker room together. I think he's a good leader. I don't think it's like fucking Adam Gase in the years past where the whole thing just totally fell apart. So it's going to be rough in the beginning for the Jets, but you got to keep that faith because they have a rough second half schedule. And I think another year of letting this offense click together with Michael LaFleur. I do think you're talking about the Jets finishing the year well and maybe finishing 7-10, where, we know the AFC's stacked, but with the expanded playoffs, maybe that last team's getting in at 9-8. So maybe you're talking about the Jets having a, really nice finish to the year and staying in at least a contention for a playoff spot going into the final 3 weeks of the season. So definitely more optimism with them. I think it could get ugly for the Giants in year 1, even though I trust Daboll and Shane. I've gotten to the point now, Pete, where, and I'll let you go here before we get into Daniel Jones, I've gotten to a point where I've basically done a 180. I think he loses the starting job at some point, either because of health reasons or because of performance at some point in the year.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. We'll definitely get to Daniel Jones in a second here. But to stick with the Jets, put out a poll on Twitter, and I said, who's more likely to hit the over this year? Jets 5.5, Giants 7. And this was as I was looking at the schedule because I wanted to see kind of what people were thinking without knowing that strength of schedule number, where the Giants have the easiest schedule in the NFL right now. And yet the over for Jets at 5.5 hit, or people voted at 77% more likely to hit than the Giants. And it makes sense to me. The Jets are on this weirdly luxurious spot, and luxurious is the wrong word, but they're in this blessing of a spot where wins is not the be all end all. It's about field competitiveness, and it's a stupid thing to think about from like an actual team perspective. But from a fan's point, if they're covering spreads, if they're in games, you're going to start feeling much better about this team if they're playing competitive football. It sounds like such a lame duck way to look at the season, but it's 100% true. If Zach Wilson's making big throws, scoring touchdowns, like it's such a silly thing to say too. Like scoring touchdowns is so important in this league. And the Jets and Giants have been two of the worst teams in the league scoring, just putting points on the board. I've talked about the Giants for years now, just averaging 17 points a game, and it's miserable and it sucks. And you have no hope unless if your defense plays out of its mind, you get some turnovers and you win, 17-14. It's ugly and it sucks, right? The Cowboys had 40 more touchdowns than the Giants last year. 40. There's only 17 games, Pat. That's a shit ton of touchdowns, right? So like if Zach Wilson is leading scoring drives and they're scoring 20 plus points a game and they sneak a couple out and they win 6 or 7, you're going to feel really good about this team and what's going on. And you mentioned all those guys before. Another guy you got to mention is Breece Hall, because Breece Hall and Michael Carter combined could be a real running back duo. That could be another weapon for them, another ease of tension for Zach Wilson. So there's reasons to feel decent about what's going on with the Jets here. So I do totally agree with you. The flip side for the Giants is the Daboll factor, right? Because if this offense looks good under Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor, Daboll is going to rightfully so get a crap ton of credit here. And it has to do with a few things, right? You got Neal, you got Andrew Thomas back again, right? You got two tackles now. You got some other guys on the O-line. It's still not the best group ever, but it's better. So now it's again put up or shut up time. If you could put some points on the board, I don't care if the Giants are 2-5 to start the year, but you can't have 10-point performances. You can't have 14-point performances, 13 points. That is right back to last year. You said we're at square one now again. You're 100% right. And if we're scoring less than 20 points a game, we're back to square zero. We're not even at square one because we're going to rip a Band-Aid off again with Daniel Jones and figure it out again next year. So as far as looking towards something positive, the Jets have something more positive closer in their line of sight.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I agree with you. I think there is a lot of potential. I just think the fact that, your starting quarterback is going to be hurt for the first 1 or 2 games, you hope it's not more than that. It's going to be a slow start. It's going to be a slow start, but maybe, I would never say a slow start is good for the team. But I think they really have to rely on the fact that they've got such a weak schedule on the second half. And maybe because he's bald and he looks like a badass motherfucker, I trust Saleh more so than any coach they've had in the past. But he was spoken so highly of with San Francisco. He had led tremendous defenses with the 49ers. I trust the future of the Jets more so than I think I have in the last 5-6 years.
And the Jets do also have some guys on defense now, right? Like Carl Lawson's going to be back. They do have Franklin Myers, who had a year last year. CJ Mosley's in the lineup again and healthy, right? Like there's another reason to believe that the Jets defense can be pretty good. And if that's the case, and Sauce Gardner's making some plays or shutting people down, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at this. The Jets, sneaky. They don't have the pressure of the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say that was my favorite of the draft, Sauce Gardner. And that was the biggest area of improvement for the defense was the secondary, because it was fucking awful, putrid trying to watch that secondary cover people last year. So I think Sauce Gardner is going to be a stud. And the fact that they added Jordan Whitehead, I think the secondary is going to be a lot better. So the defense is as much as we talk about the offense and the weapons and Zach Wilson, the defense was what needed the most improvement because they were god awful last year. And for defensive coach Robert Saleh, that needs to get cleaned up. And I think it will, because I think the secondary is going to be much better.
Yeah. I mean, think about the front: Carl Lawson, Quinnen Williams, Solomon Thomas, Jonathan Franklin Myers, right? And then you get CJ Mosley healthy. You get, Quincy Williams. All right. Quan Alexander, we'll see what they can get out of him. Like, those are dudes. We got some dudes here for the Jets defense, and they have a chance to be a real group, and we'll see. And I do think, though, the fact that they don't have the playoff pressure is important. It's important for them. They're not in a place where, like the Patriots made the playoffs last year. The Patriots, if they don't make the playoffs this year, it's a huge disappointment. If the Jets are even in the graphic on ESPN in week 12 that they're in the hunt, that's a win of a season. that means that season went about as good as it can, right? And you're going to be frustrated week to week when they leave 7 points on the board and lose, or Zach Wilson throws a pick and they lose. But again, it comes down to, can Zach Wilson put points on the board, and can this defense make plays? I think there's a chance that can happen. So it is kind of exciting. Let's talk about Daniel Jones specifically here, though, Pat, because I know you have takes. I've had takes for years now on this guy, and it's frustrating because you can cut up Daniel Jones highlights and show somebody who's never watched him before and say, "Yo, this guy's good, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, it looks great. Good deep ball. Guy can run. Yeah, got some zip when he steps into it, right?" But it's everything else that's been so damn frustrating for him. Now, with Tyrod Taylor as his backup and Daniel Jones in year 4, never quite hitting stride, except for when he fell over the 10-yard line. Like, that pressure, that pressure can mount. That pressure can become very real. And I want to say this right now. If Daniel Jones can't handle the pressure of Tyrod Taylor as his backup and he crumbles, sayonara. You could have kicked him to the curb last year if you really wanted to. You could have drafted a quarterback if you really wanted to. They didn't. So it's time. So what do you think now about his prospects, about his first 2 to 6 or 8 weeks, and how do you see it's going to play out?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to play out well. I don't. For the longest time, I was a Daniel Jones defender. You know it. Goddamn Lugian knows it. And, it was always, okay, well, if he had the right coach, right? He had Pat Shurmur his rookie year. Pat Shurmur wasn't a great coach. We good offensive mind. That was the best year he had. Daniel Jones, 24 touchdowns. Look, the ceiling looked high. The future looked bright. And now, you'd say Joe Judge and the offense they had with the Clapper, Garrett, screwed him up. And now it's his third offense in the last 4 years. At some point, the excuses have to be, he's got to overcome the excuses. And quarterbacks with a lot less have done more so far than Daniel Jones has in the last couple of years. You can make the excuse, Kenny Golladay can't catch a damn ball. And what do they have a number one wideout if he can't do anything? Well, maybe a lot of that is the fact that he hasn't had an actual quarterback that can consistently deliver him the ball in traffic and get him opportunities. Kenny Galladay's been dog shit, but still, it's, you can't just place all the blame elsewhere. Daniel Jones has to take that and rise above it. Joe Burrow is the perfect example. I'm not asking Daniel Jones to be Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow had the worst offensive line in football last year and made it to the Super Bowl. And yes, they have great weapons, but you as a quarterback, yeah, it's unfair, all the pressure that's put on you, but you have to take that on your shoulders and you've got to rise above that. And Daniel Jones just has not been able to do that, whether it's a lack of weapons, whether it's guys, the receivers. Kadarius Toney couldn't stay healthy last year. He's quite, I don't worry about his health, by the way, in the preseason. I think they are being super conservative with him. I don't even think they're giving the chance to put him out on the field in these first 2 preseason games and risk an injury because he is their most dangerous weapon and they need to have him healthy. So I think they are just basically, I wouldn't say lying about an injury, but if it's like a sore, like a sore hamstring, that soreness goes away in 2 days. I think they're extending that now for these 2 weeks, basically, that it's been. Then you've got some excitement in Wan'Dale Robinson. So again, there is potential weapons there. I don't think Daniel Jones has it. And the fact that the Giants, all around as a team are in year 1 of this rebuild, I think the fact it could get to the point where they get off to a rough start again and it's ugly. And you're talking about maybe 1-5 Giants the first 6 weeks. And this year, I think it's going to be different because I don't think, we talk about the time, do teams tank, right? Miami Dolphins just had an entire tampering case, and sanctions put on them. The one thing that they didn't get caught on was tanking after Brian Flores said that he was paid to lose games. So I don't think teams tank, and I don't think Brian Dable and Joe Shane, I think above all else, they want to establish a winning culture. So if it gets to the point where it's 1-5 in the quarterback play, you're asking yourself that question again, and you're pessimistic about it, I think it may just get to the point where they say, fuck it, we want to win some goddamn games here. And Tyrod Taylor is a guy that's a Pro Bowl quarterback in the past with Buffalo. He hasn't been able to stay healthy over the last couple of years. He's lost his starting job to very bright, young, Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks now, the last couple teams he was on, most recently with Justin Herbert, the Chargers. So he's a guy that's in the past, when he's been on the field, he's competent. And if it gets to a point where Daniel Jones, where you finally have to admit as a Giants fan, he doesn't have it, he's not our quarterback, I think that there might be a scenario where they go to Tyrod Taylor and they say, we need to steady this ship because we're trying to build a winning culture here. And it just, for whatever reason, with Daniel Jones as the quarterback, we haven't had it.
And as my buddy Steve Shazor, shout out Steve on Twitter, he pointed out to me, and I like we all knew this already too, but he laid it out eloquently. You know, this GM, this coach, this front office has no ties to Daniel Jones, which makes it much easier to rip that Band-Aid off. My question
Yep.
is when, right? Like my question is how soon can you do it and still feel good about your preseason, right? Like if you're giving Daniel Jones all these first team reps all off season leading up to it, maybe Tyrod doesn't need it as much as most quarterbacks would because he's a veteran, but how quickly you pull that trigger, rip that Band-Aid off could speak poorly on your preparation as well. Because right now I'm looking at this schedule here, Pat. So you tell me when you think something like this could happen. Through the first 10 weeks of the season, listen to some of the opponents the Giants have. They have the Titans, the Panthers, and Cowboys first 3 weeks, right? You know, 1.5, 2 winnable games there, we'll say, right? The Bears, Packers, Ravens, 1 winnable game. Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans, Lions. So in that first 10 weeks, you have the Titans, Panthers, Bears, Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans, and Lions. Those are teams that the Giants could, in reality, be favored to win. They could be favored to win depending on how they compete with the Cowboys, how they compete with the Packers. They can be favored to beat the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Lions, etc. So when is the right point? Is it in those first 10 weeks at all? Or do you think this has to be a second half of the season thing? Because Daniel Jones deserves his one last leash, full leash to try to score some damn points for once in his career. Or is it worthwhile for the Giants to say, all right, week 4, we got the Bears. We're 0-3. Daniel Jones sucks. Let's go beat the Bears with Tyrod Taylor. When does this happen in your eyes, Pat?
If Daniel Jones is fully healthy and doesn't get injured, and the Giants are off to a rough start, I'd say the earliest, or I'd say a good spot to do that would be week 7 at Jacksonville. I think that's a case where if after 6 games they're 1-5, the offense looks uninspiring. If nothing else, just for the fact of, like I said, changing at the quarterback, looking for a spark, looking to try to build that winning culture, Tyrod Taylor would start against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 7. Because, the schedule, and that's when the schedule gets easy. And maybe that's the one thing Daniel Jones, doesn't have, but that's not an excuse anymore. He doesn't have the start of a weak schedule outside of playing the Chicago Bears. They're playing the Titans. Yeah, the Panthers aren't great, but they got off to a great start last year. I have more faith in Baker Mayfield than Sam Darnold. And here's another if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, their offense was pretty decent through the first 3 games. They were 3-0. So Carolina is not just going to be a gimme game. Like if Christian McCaffrey's healthy, he's a game changer. So I can easily see the Giants starting off 0-3. I don't think they'd pull the plug though that early. But those defenses are pretty good. All right, the Panthers pass rush was their calling card last year. Dallas's defense got much better last year, and they are a turnover machine with Diggs. Chicago, that's the only thing they've got going for them somewhat is their defense. And if they're able to hold on to Roquan Smith. And then Packers, Super Bowl contender, Baltimore Ravens, they're going to have a big bounce back year. Great defense, which was banged up all over the place last year. So if they're 1-5, I think they may be looking for a change against Jacksonville and say, hey, we've got four winnable games in a row. Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans, Lions with a bye week in between. I think that change to Tyrod Taylor could come week 6, if not by the bye week.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Week 7 feels like the earliest you can do it. You have to give DJ a chance to just play it out, get some rust out, and see what happens.
You do have to give him a chance, yes, but as you said, they have no ties to him. And if the Giants aren't a playoff team this year, there's no shot they're bringing him back. Unless they go 6-11 and the defense gives up 50 points a game and the offense is a middle to top tier offense.
If they're losing shootouts, there's a different conversation to have. I just don't think any of us can fathom.
No, you and I know that if they're losing games this year, it's probably because they're going to be scoring 17 points a game again.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll see, I guess, what he can do there from a non-in-the-room person, like somebody who's not a part of the New York Giants. It's much easier for me to say this. I understand that it's not how football works. It's not how pro sports works. Playing Tyrod Taylor could hurt the team, right? And now I don't want to act like Tyrod Taylor is a guaranteed winning record because he's not exactly that. Like he's not guaranteed to come in with this Giants team and go 4 games above 500. He's not quite that guy, though. He is very, very solid. Like, if Tyrod comes in, though, and does have a little bit of a winning record after the 1-6 start, and they end up at 7 and 10 or 8 and 9 or whatever it is, what are they doing next year? What are they doing? Are they going to stick with Tyrod Taylor? Because there's a bunch of quarterbacks in this draft coming up, Pat, and you could argue that the Giants need to be positioned well to get one of said quarterbacks. So is there a world where the Tyrod thing isn't the best idea? I don't know. I hate saying that because you want to win games. You want to be competitive. You want to put the best team out there. But that being said, could be a bite in the ass situation if Tyrod gives them the 11th pick instead of the 3rd pick.
That's true. And to just go back to, I said most recently with Herbert and the Chargers, I know Tyrod Taylor spent most of the season with Houston last year and lost that job to Davis Mills. That's the other way around, where he came in as the starting quarterback. They were dog shit.
Yeah, they're
all types
terrible
of problems.
team.
We know how bad Houston's been run the last couple of years, especially with the whole Deshaun Watson thing, which is now the Browns' problem. But that was a spot where you had a rookie quarterback, and you have to say, okay, let's see what we have with the rookie. So
right.
Tyrod Taylor, yeah, he didn't play well. Yeah, Houston's dog shit. Now you have a different scenario. Now he's the guy where you've got a lame duck quarterback, and if you're not going to pay him next year, I think Tyrod Taylor I don't think he's going to hurt this team for the future. He's 33. If he does well, he's a guy where you say he's the starter going into next year, or he's competing for the starting job next year. But we don't have to pay him that much. We can give him another 1-year deal, $7-8 million, because he's going to be 34. So you're not going to have to pay him a ton. And if the year goes as I think it's going to go, where the Giants win 4 or 5 games, you're looking at a top 5 draft pick with a chance to trade up and try to get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. And then Tyrod Taylor is once again pushing the quarterback next year, only it's not going to be a 4th, 5th-year lame duck QB. It's going to be your first-round draft pick who you're now building your future around. So I think he could help, because I think he could buy himself another 1-year deal with a chance to push potentially a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah, and shout out Tyrod Taylor, man. One of the most likable dudes in the NFL. Every time he's talking to the media, when he was on Hard Knocks, like, this guy is just so likable. It makes sense that every time he's on a team with competency that they do decent, because he's that guy. Like, he is that leader. He can control the locker room and all that stuff. So shout out Tyrod. It's good to have him around, and hopefully, maybe DJ can learn a thing or two, but I don't know about all that. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see about that. All right. So last thing here, last words, Pax. We got to get running here soon. Give me one take, NFL wide, not Giants, not Jets, that you're thinking about. If you didn't already put your flag in the ground on this take, that you're thinking about spiking that flag into the ground and putting all your chips into a basket. I know you did it last year at the Cardinals. I doubt it's going to be them again. But give me your one big take that you're thinking about going into this NFL season.
It's the Las Vegas Raiders this year. They're going to win the AFC West, and I think they're playing in the AFC Championship game, and I think Derek Carr has an MVP caliber season if he's not an MVP finalist. I think Davante Adams is that damn good. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and we know Davante Adams caught some flack for his words. You go from one Hall of Famer to another. Derek Carr's not a Hall of Famer yet. He could be if Davante Adams, again, the point is, yes, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer, but let's not pretend like Davante Adams is not a top 2 wide receiver in football. He is. So he can make Derek Carr that much better. And they've got a top 3 tight end in the game in Darren Waller. Those weapons alone are great. Then you throw in the fact that Hunter Renfrow was beast mode for them last year. If Josh Jacobs stays healthy, that gives them the run game element. And even then, I love Zamir White from Georgia. I love that draft pick. They added Kenyon Drake. They've got tons of running backs. I think Vegas's offense is in for a scary, scary year. It's can they stay disciplined on that offensive line? They moved past all the adversity, all the bullshit with Gruden and Ruggs and all that other shit last year. Rich Bisaccia, talk about holding the rope. It was Bisaccia holding the rope. I think McDaniels as a head coach, he's always been a great offensive mind. Didn't work out his first time with Denver. Now he's had 11, 12, 13 years now since. I think he's ready. And I think that pass rush with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones is going to be incredible. I think Vegas is in to surprise everybody, much like I thought it was Arizona last year. And then we realized Kyler Murray is not a winner. And also that Cliff Kingsbury is a second half dud. So I'm not gonna. I'm fine that I threw that bullet out last year with the Cardinals because I looked like a genius through the first 8 weeks, and then they had the second half slide and got destroyed by the Rams. I'm taking my shot again this year. It's the Raiders. They're gonna win the West.
Raiders right now, 8.5 over under, only minus 130 on the juice there, Pat. That sounds like you locked it in yesterday to me.
I didn't, but I'm gonna have to now. I'm gonna have to now. I think they win. I think they win 11 or 12 games, and I think it's the fact that the AFC West is loaded. They're all going to be beating up on each other. I don't think the Chiefs are they're a Super Bowl contender because they have Mahomes. I don't see him getting to the Super Bowl. I don't see him getting to the AFC Championship game. The Chargers are good. Yes, they're scary. They added the defense, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. I don't trust Brandon Staley. I love the aggressiveness to a certain degree. I think it cost them games last year, cost them a spot in the playoffs. And then you look at Denver, and I just don't think Russell Wilson is the Russell Wilson that he was with Seattle, right? Russell Wilson's still good, but he's not great. And I think you're looking at a division. We've got a bunch of good teams with some elite quarterbacks, but I think the weapon you gave Derek Carr with Devontae Adams takes them to another level. And I think they make themselves stand out above the rest. And I trust McDaniels this year. That's also the big difference.
Yeah, and there's a chance that all four of those teams have winning records. Let's be real, right? Like if the Broncos are in last place with 9 wins, who's shocked? Who's shocked by that? Not me, right? Like I'm looking at that 8.5 too now. I'm like, hey, what's up? What's up, Vegas? Like 8.5. All right, let's go. You just got to get a winning record here. 9-8. Let's ride. Minus 130. That's great juice. I love it. I think that's a controversial team because people don't want to believe what they haven't seen. And even though the Raiders were good last year, they didn't get over the hump. And they haven't seen Derek Carr get over the hump. So it's hard for fans to comprehend a world where they're clicking on all cylinders and they're a playoff juggernaut. But I like the take. I'm going to go with my take here. And it's a team that I've been pulling for years now and a quarterback who I've been pulling for since he came into the league. The Baltimore Ravens, baby. They're currently at 9.5 on the over-under. I think everything went wrong last year for the Ravens. It's actually hysterical when you think about it. They lost 3 starting running backs before the season started. They lost their entire defensive backfield unit basically throughout the season. Like everything that could have went wrong, and Lamar missed a couple games and didn't run for a touchdown last year. What? We're talking about Lamar Jackson, unanimous MVP, electric quarterback that we have here, fighting for a contract who will get paid at some point or another, especially if he doesn't get hurt again. I am putting my chips in the Baltimore Ravens basket. They are a top-tier franchise for a reason. They've been so for a long time, and Lamar will rise again this year. 9.5, minus 160. I don't care. Take the VIG. I'm winning this because they're winning 11 games. They're winning the AFC North easily. Easily. I think the Ravens are primed for a huge year.
I love that. Honestly, I love that as well. I agree with you. I think they're making a mistake not giving him his contract yet. They better do it before the season starts. Otherwise, he's going to prove them wrong like Aaron Judge proved the Yankees wrong. So I agree with you there. I love the Ravens pick.
And what you want to do is you want to back a player who's betting on himself. And Lamar is the epitome of betting on himself right now. He doesn't even have an agent, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's negotiating for himself.
It's him and his mom.
Yeah, which, I mean, is maybe not the most wisest strategy when going into contract negotiations with professionals here, but it very well may work out because when he goes on the field, he's typically awesome. So I have great faith in the Ravens this year. Get the run game going again. He was who was even their running back last year? Can we remember? Who was it? It was Mark. Was it Mark Ingram for a hot second?
Yeah, they brought him in.
I got to look it up now because it was so bad. Because I remember last year, like I drafted Gus Edwards in a league after J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, and then Gus Edwards gets hurt, and then their next guy gets hurt. Like it was
Lamar Jackson was their leading rusher.
Yeah,
it was Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray.
Yes, Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray, who are both, ancient in the world of running backs, who did their best work. They did what they could. They were okay enough, I guess. And the Ravens won games. It's not like they were a terrible team last year. They were 8-9 last year when everything went wrong. Yeah. We just need to get to 10 or 11 wins here. Let's go.
And it was Tyson Williams. And remember, they gave a handful of games to Le'Veon Bell. That's how desperate they were at running back.
They were desperate. It was bad. And let's be honest, like they had a glorified number 3 wide receiver playing their number 1 in Hollywood Brown. So like, I'm just saying, I'm trying to remember who's even their receivers this year. Did they get much better? I know people want to get hyped up on Rashad Bateman. I'm not the biggest Bateman guy personally. But
they've got the steadying force. They've got the steadying force with one of the best tight ends in Mark Andrews. But yeah, then you're hoping Rashad Bateman can be a number one. But then also, I like Devin Duvernay. They've got a lot of raw wide receivers, Bateman, Duvernay. So we'll see if they can pan out. But the fact that the running back should be healthy this year, and you've got Mark Andrews coming back off the monster season, Lamar's the steadying force. I'm not worried about the Ravens. I love the 10-win pick.
There we go. All right, Pat Boyle. Any other last words? You're going to be on air a couple times over the next week. What do you got?
That's true. By the time you're listening this, it's probably too late unless you haven't been keeping up with me. So I will be on The Fan this Wednesday morning, the August 17th, 2 to 5 in for Sal. And then I'll be on national radio in for DA on the morning show on CBS Sports Radio this Friday, the 19th, 6 to 10. So
how do they listen to that, Pat? How do they hear you on the DA show on Friday morning?
Free Odyssey app, baby. Download it, listen to it wherever you are. The free Odyssey app. I'm a company guy, so
I love it. Good stuff, Pat. Always killing it. I appreciate your time as always. I love talking sports with you, and we'll be doing it again more and more as football season gets here. It's exciting times. All right,
absolutely, Petey, and I appreciate you, brother, and you continue to do an amazing job with this podcast. It's not an easy world to get into, but I know that you see that DraftKings sponsor in the bottom right corner. That's Petey Kennedy holding the rope there and getting into the world of podcasting. And yeah, who knew we would have used Dean Gluss's terms as many times as we have tonight? But you've done an amazing job with this, man. Keep killing it, and you're back in the mix at the Fan. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Pete Kennedy's doing a show not too far from now on WFAN. Don't count it out, baby.
Hey man, we'll see what happens. We're keeping our hopes up high. We're putting in the work, and we're going with it, And to use one more Glossism to say goodbye to everybody, perhaps the smartest thing he ever said. Got to take advantage of your advantages. Got to do it. You got to do it. I don't know what that means exactly, but I do know what it means. The Giants got to do it. The Jets got to do it. The Mets and Yankees got to take advantage of their advantages and just win. That's it. That's all we got for today. Subway Sports Talk. I'm Pete Kennedy for Pat Boyle. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify. Subscribe, hit the notifications bell on YouTube. Tell your friends. Hit us up online, social media. That's Subway Sports Talk. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Cheers.